Good evening. This is the December 19th, 2017 board meeting. And we'll start with calling roll or stating roll. I'm Anna Marie Pavlik-Rosen, board chair, present. Walt Baldwin is present, and Dawn Hale. Regrettably, Ralph Ledwick is out sick, and of course we have James Liebman here with us. Our first order of business is discussing meeting minutes. And from reading over the meeting minutes, I noticed that we had a question about the October meeting minutes. And I noticed looking at the October minutes, there was one change that came in very late on that day that was to be updated, and it appears that it was not. Is that, so I think that's something that should still be looked into.
We did change that, but we had a question from another board member that wanted to know if we didn't need to, we made the appropriate change if we didn't need to discuss it in an open meeting, whether that was approved by all.
Okay, for the October minutes we're talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, was there any discussion on that?
I guess my recollection of it is we approved them with those changes. We noted that they weren't in there, and I got an affirmative response from David. And
We can email those to you all if you would like, and we already have them approved, but yes.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
And so then we just want to make sure that the ones that go into the archives and that is on the website should be the updated version. Then.
Right, with the approved
Okay.
changes.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take care of that. Okay, for the November meeting minutes, we have two versions, one created by staff and one by myself. James, do you recommend that we just make a motion to approve one and then the other, or how do you suggest we do this?
It's however the board sees fit to handle it. You've got two sets of minutes that have been created, and whatever motion any member sees fit to make.
Okay. Yes, we have one version that's 21 pages long and then a second version that's 13 pages long. Just for reference, the October minutes were 16 pages long.
Excuse me. You know, in the November meeting, you all said you wanted to include discussion in the minutes. And so I think the increased page number reflects the will of the board at that time of having discussion in the minutes. I think that it's the staff's responsibility to do minutes, and we need to give the staff opportunity to do those minutes and to send them to us before we start trying to make changes to them. I'm good with the staff's minutes as they were sent to us. I'm not good with your minutes. So I can make a motion to approve the minutes as sent to us and compiled by the staff.
Okay, do we have a second? The motion failed without a second. Do we have a motion to approve the other set of minutes?
So moved. And I would also comment, I believe that meeting, I believe Hans's view that, the minutes should be fairly sparse with, and I think that's probably where we want to go. I think I've read somewhere in the Robert's rule that it should be minutes and not hours. And I think that's a reasonable approach for us to take.
I have no problem with the minutes being more concise. However, with the minutes that Ms. Rosen did, I do have problems with that. So I would like to amend the minutes then.
Let's back up one.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a motion to
Okay.
approve.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Just excuse my interruption, just so we keep everything on track.
Right.
Mr. Baldwin made a motion. I think we started
Okay.
discussion
Right.
before the chair got to
Right.
ask for a second.
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second, and then we had discussion.
Okay.
Thanks, Jane.
Okay. And I'll just go through my notes, and if you all want to follow along on the minutes, you can. The statement in your minutes where it's talking about the resolution that I proposed. In your version of the minutes, you leave out the word notice mechanism, and I would like that word put back in the statement that I made about no intention of leaving KyMEA. So that's one thing. I asked at that time if you all wanted me, my resolution, and I have it here.
Do you know what page that changes on?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
What section was it in?
It was in the section 11, I think, dealing
11,
with the
okay.
resolution.
That'll help.
My resolution is 2 pages long, 1 page and a second, a paragraph on the second page. When I asked you all if you wanted me to read the whole thing, Walt replied no need for me to read it all, that you all had read it. So I only read and we only discussed the last paragraph of the resolution. I assumed because there was no discussion of the first page of the resolution, you all didn't have problems with it. If I had known at the time that you all were going to consider the resolution, just the last paragraph, I wouldn't have agreed with that at the time. So if you all want me to read the whole thing to clarify the minutes, I'd be happy to do that. Or if you just want to include the whole document in the minutes, I'm fine with that too. But I'm not fine with only the final paragraph of the resolution being in the minutes.
Okay, well, that is what occurred in the meeting, and that I feel the reason why we didn't include the whereas portions was that I didn't agree with it.
Well, I would say that that's not the resolution we adopted. We read what the combined resolutions were, and that paragraph we read into the record was the resolution we voted on.
But
we read it. I believe James had us read it. 3
yeah, we read it
times.
like 3 times. I agree with that. But when we kept referring to the resolution, I thought we were referring to my whole document, not the final page of the document.
Well, I think that was partly my error, that I didn't realize resolutions actually was a formal term. I thought resolution was just another way of saying a statement, which...
Do you have any comment on this, James?
The only comment I had is what I submitted to the board previously. If we did it again, I would ask that we do a little slightly different procedure. But I think where you are now is that Mr. Baldwin's made a motion and second, and if I get it correctly, you're asking him to amend his motion.
Yes, to include these changes.
Okay. So that's where we are right now.
Well, I mean, I'm not inclined to amend the motion because I don't. We clearly didn't vote on the entire document. We started with the motion from the chair for her resolution. You preferred yours. I read an amalgamation of those last 2, and that's what we voted on. So
I don't understand what problem you all have with the whereas section of the resolution.
I feel there are things in there that never actually happened.
What is in here is from documents that are on the web page. Dates are taken from documents on the web page. To say that what is in here did not happen is ridiculous. Because all you have to do is go to our web page and look at the various documents there, and you see the timeline that is spelled out here. So, if you can tell me one of these specific things that didn't happen, go for it.
Well, I think there's 2 issues here. One, the accuracy of the assertions made in the source material in your resolution. But 2, pertinent to this motion, it's just not what we voted on. We voted on a 3rd motion made up of the first 2, and that's what was adopted and what was read into the record.
So, James, in terms of procedure, we have a change that we aren't incorporating. What do we do next in terms of?
Are you talking about this motion?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just be sure I'm clear as to where we are.
Right.
But backing up a step, it's obvious that there was a misunderstanding among the board members at the last meeting, and that's unfortunate, and I would work very hard that that doesn't happen again. For tonight's purposes, you have Mr. Baldwin's motion and a second. Ms. Hales requests that the motion be amended, which it appears Mr. Baldwin is not inclined to do, so that's where you are. And it can be discussed as the board sees fit, and then have a vote.
Okay. I think we're ready for the vote. Would you like to call this? Thank you, Kathy.
Ms. Hale?
No.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
Ms. Rosen?
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. So, next item is accept electric, water, and cable financials for November.
Good evening. The financials start on page 54 of your board package. That's the statement of net position, which is similar to a balance sheet in a for-profit company. If you look at line number 60, that's the total assets. As of November 30th, it was $168,707,000, up 2.4% from prior year. Line 115 is the total liabilities, a little over $84 million. That's down 3.7% from last year, so that's always a good thing when your assets are going up and your liabilities are going down. And then line 150 is total net position of $84,600,000, and then your total liabilities and net position on line 155 of $168 million. The next page, on page 55, is the cash and investment schedule. This is required per the investment policy. It's just a schedule that shows the restricted and unrestricted cash and the restricted and unrestricted investments. So line 50 is the total restricted cash of $1.3 million. Line 95 is total unrestricted cash of $17 million. Line 100 is total restricted and unrestricted cash of $18 million. The next section is the investments, which are just CDs. Line 135, total restricted investments of $9.3 million. Line 145, unrestricted investments of $118,000. And the total restricted and unrestricted investments on line 150 is $9.4 million. The next page, 56, just is a snapshot of our debt position. We did have some payments made in at the end of November for December. So some of those payments are shown in the decreases column. One thing to note on the FSN third lien lease, we will be drawing the rest of that down by the end of December to reimburse the company for the expenditures we've already made for the FSN improvements. So that will be an additional $3.2 million, roughly. The next page, 57, is our company-wide statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. If you look at, I'm going to focus on the year-to-date column, which is the third column of numbers. Line 20 is total operating revenues. It's $42 million, slightly under budget. But also on line 50, you'll notice that our expenditures are also under budget, so we've kept those in line. Line 55, our gross contribution is $12.5 million, and that's barely above budget. So we're right on track. We've kept our expenditures in line with our revenues. Line 140 is the total general administration expenses of $9.3 million. That's also under budget, so we've controlled costs there. And then line 190 is other revenue. It's $1.3 million. It's up quite a bit from budget. That's primarily the capital contributions. We never know at the beginning of a budget year what jobs people are going to ask us to do, and so that's why that's up so high. And then line 195 is net contribution of $4.5 million for the year so far. Pages 58 through 72 show the detail. So that page I just talked about is the summary for the whole company. If you want to know the detail of each division or department within the company, that's on pages 58 through 72. And then if you jump over to page 73, that's the cash activity summary, which just shows each of our bank accounts and the summary of the transactions that flow through each one for the month. That's pages 73 to 75. 76 details out the electronic funds transfers out of those accounts, because on the summary page you just see the one line item, and then on these pages it gives you the detail. And then pages 77 through 122 shows all the checks that were written. So the total of page 76 to 122 shows all the disbursements. Actually through 125, sorry. Because starting on page 123, it's the impress check register. So, any questions?
It looks good. Was this pretty much a typical month, would you say?
Yeah.
No surprises. Okay, thank you, Katrina.
Well, I want to wish y'all a Merry Christmas.
Thanks. Okay. Item number 3, consider agreement with, oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Katrina. Okay. Number 3, consider agreement with Viamedia for cable advertising managed services and for the termination of existing SeaChange and WideOrbit service agreements.
Good evening. In addition to the action item summary I've included in your board package, which kind of gives you a brief history of our ad insertion operation, which dates back to about 1999. We have included about 50 additional pages of supplemental information related to this project in the board packet starting on page 126. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to read through a little bit of that, so I'll be summarizing some of those points to make you aware of the scope of what we're asking for tonight. First, a brief history on the ad insertion operation and our present situation. As I mentioned, FPB has performed internal ad insertion operations since 1999 and 2000. We made an expenditure of that time about $250,000 for the hardware and software that runs the various systems that integrate to accomplish this. Presently, we insert cable advertising on 24 networks. These are some of the largest national networks: ESPN, CNN, Fox News, USA, TBS, History Channel, and the list goes on. We have 2 account executives on staff who work on commission to go out locally and sell Frankfort businesses, hopefully some surrounding businesses in the future, our products and services. And we have a small production staff to produce the local commercials, which insert in conjunction with the national and regional commercials we receive from external sources. Currently, there are 2 operating systems that integrate to run commercial ad insertion. One is a SeaChange operation, and the other is WideOrbit. The SeaChange is the actual ad insertion hardware that physically inserts our local commercials into the network streams coming down from the satellite. Hopefully it's seamless. You never know it's a local ad versus a national ad. That's the way it's supposed to work, and it does 99.9% of the time probably. And WideOrbit is the software and hardware system that handles our scheduling of the ads, our traffic, what spot's supposed to play on what channel at what specific time, and our account receivable and billing functions. The SeaChange equipment has reached its end of life and end of service life, and that's caused us some problems. The servers run typically Microsoft Operating System Server 2003. You can tell that's a little old. The SeaChange database software runs Microsoft SQL Server 6.5. That dates back to 1996 when that software came out. And as a result of the old and the end-of-life hardware, SeaChange is now charging us 18% year-over-year increases to maintain post-warranty maintenance on the SeaChange operation. And on December 31st of 2018, they will cease to support the hardware and software of our entire operation. Ad revenues for the ad insertion has been averaging about $720,000 over the last 3 to 5 years. It's kind of leveled out. A lot of that is due to declining cable subscribers as people cut the cord, and the fact that we haven't had any new products to sell and offer to our customers. Ad insertion is very important to FPB for a few reasons. I'll try to highlight those. It's a great benefit to the community. It allows small businesses to advertise at competitive rates on 24 of the most popular television networks. This is in comparison to the thousands and sometimes millions of dollars advertisers have to spend for ads when they go to the national cable operation themselves. As an example, a Super Bowl ad this year, 130-second ad can be between $5 and $5.5 million, 130-second commercial. We have a little better price than that. Typically, networks allow local ad insertion between 2 and 3 minutes per network. That's when we can run local commercials. Since implementation of the full service network, which really cranked up about 2000, we've been able to promote and market our own FPB products and services, cable, security, broadband, telephone, and video on demand content. The fact that FPB has this internal ability saves us tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars by not having to pay a third party to run FPB commercials on our behalf. Our existing rates are low as $4 for a 30-second commercial, and our highest rate is $27 on ESPN if you're trying to target an ad within a 1-hour window. FPB ad insertion has also been very beneficial to many of our local nonprofit organizations. We help to promote their businesses and their fundraisers by running free commercials. We've probably run into the millions of free promos over the course of our 19 years of ad insertion. And that's just yet another service that Frankfort Planning Board is trying to do on behalf of our community. So why am I here today? We need to accomplish a few different things. We need to decide how to move forward in our best interest, taking into consideration costs, services, and the benefits. We need new revenue opportunities in order to help compensate for our declining cable subscribers and our net revenue, which is kind of leveled out. And we must address the current equipment issues due to the end of life and impending loss of the service opportunities that those from SeaChange. What are our options? We can spend $150,000 to $175,000 to replace what we already have that has to be replaced, and maintain the status quo with our 24 ad insertion networks. If we want to expand that to 50, say, double that cost easy. We would still need to continue spending $70,000 annually over the ever-increasing service agreements with SeaChange. And I mentioned how those are now going up 18% per year due to the post-warranty service that we have. We would have to go out and hire another traffic and billing coordinator, who we are presently without due to having accepted another position within the company, and that cost would be about $60,000 for salary and benefits. Or we eliminate all future capital expenditures and future service contract expenses by moving to what is called a managed service arrangement with Viamedia, who we are proposing tonight. Viamedia would provide all back-end operations while FPB would maintain control of all of our employees and focus entirely on the sales effort. This would be a cost-sharing model with Viamedia, where they would receive a percentage of our net revenue with a guaranteed monthly minimum. The FPB would pay a 28% monthly fee to Viamedia based on our net revenue, or a minimum of $15,000, whichever is greater. Mr. Denton has provided some cost comparisons with various what-if scenarios, and those can be found on page 165 if you'd like to look at those. And he'll be willing to speak to those later on if you have further questions. Now, who is Viamedia? Viamedia is a Lexington, Kentucky-based organization and is the leading independent provider of DMA, which stands for Designated Market Area. We're in the Lexington DMA. Based on cable TV and digital advertising sales and commercial delivery in the United States. Today, Viamedia partners with over 65 providers, including some of America's fastest growing companies. They partner with traditional cable companies, telephony companies, municipalities, and power companies. They employ 350 individuals and work in more than 75 DMAs, representing 2.5 million households. We're very fortunate to have with us this evening 3 representatives from Viamedia who've been very responsive to all of our questions during this process as we've negotiated an agreement. Randy Likes is the Chief Technology Officer. David Solomon is the Chief Revenue Officer. And Ashley Roach is the Business Development and Partner Relations Manager. I appreciate all of them being here this evening, and they are here should the board have questions of them when I get through here. The benefits of moving to Viamedia are varied. As I mentioned earlier, we only are limited to 24 insertion networks with our current setup. The partnership with Viamedia would increase that number to 50 high-definition networks. This will allow our sales team to offer more options for local, regional, and national advertisers. It will also greatly benefit the FPB marketing team as they work to promote FPB services and our various offerings. Viamedia estimates a $460,000 lift in local revenue over the 5-year term of the contract due to the additional inventory we will have to sell between 24 networks and 50 networks. FPB will also greatly benefit from Viamedia's assistance with what's called national sales stewardship. We presently receive national sales orders from NCC, National Cable Communications. They're an advertising, sales, marketing, and technology company headquartered in New York City, and they work on behalf of virtually all the leading regional and national advertisers in the country. We get NCC ads from Ford, Longhorn Steakhouse, Buick, places like that. And those are ads that we do not have the option of getting on our own. Unless you're tied into a big group like NCC, you can't receive those type of ads. NCC has 450 people in their organization, and they operate 17 offices across the nation. Typically, at the present time, FPB receives NCC buys from Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, or Washington, D.C., and we're one of 45 NCC affiliates across the country. Viamedia is also a national company, and they have staff who work firsthand with the regional offices NCC has across the country to ensure their partners are receiving their fair share of the NCC business. Viamedia estimates $685,000 in national and political revenue over the course of the 5-year deal we're proposing. Viamedia's ability to sell unused inventory through direct response sales and management is a completely new revenue stream that we would have. With our existing 24 networks, we receive about 2,300 avails a day. An avail is one opportunity for local ad insertion. That equates to a lot of spots over the course of the year. In 2017, as of last week when I ran these numbers, FPB had run in excess of 223,000 30-second commercials. That's a lot of spots, but there remains over 640,000 avails as unsold inventory. Again, that's just for 24 networks. If you expand those numbers out across 50 networks, that's even greater potential for additional revenue with direct response, and Viamedia estimates another about $175,000 in new revenue over the course of the 5-year deal. What Viamedia does, they have a network of partners that they can sell our unused inventory to. They call it pennies from heaven. It sells for much less than a normal 30-second commercial, but it is filling up that unused inventory, which right now we're making 0 off of. So if you have 50 networks and you've got 640,000 opportunities as we stand now, it may double. That's a lot of pennies that can add substantially to our revenue base and would help us a great bit. Between the National Sales Stewardship, the NCC portion, and the direct response, pennies from heaven, Viamedia believes FPB should see a 19% lift in overall revenue for ad insertion over the course of 5 years. The second completely new revenue potential through Viamedia is called online availabilities, and there's an overview of online availabilities on page 148 of your board packet. FPB has completely dealt with linear television advertising to this point, 30-second commercial. That's all we can do. Today, we live in a digital world. We have laptops, smartphones, tablets. There's a whole new world of advertising opportunities out there, and FPB sales team is eager and excited to have the opportunity to make those advertising streams available to our clients. Viamedia has the knowledge, experience, and existing network to make FPB successful in that area. None of these online availabilities are tied to FPB's customers in any way. There's no gathering of metadata, or IP addresses to assist in the execution of these type sales. The online availabilities are targeted to zip codes, geofencing, demographics, and audience segments. The great benefit of having online availabilities is that our sales arsenal is not, at that point, limited to our cable subscribers. So our sales team will have no geographical limits. They can go to Versailles, they can go to Louisville, they can go to Lexington and sell online opportunities. That, again, is another great new opportunity for potential new revenue. So in summary, staff believes moving toward this managed service agreement with Viamedia is in the best interest of FPB. The actual agreement is on page 166. We would no longer be tied to capital expenditures for hardware and the upgrades that you can't avoid. We would also rid ourselves of the ever-increasing yearly service agreements with those systems. The additional services FPB sales staff will have available to us through the National Sales Stewardship, the direct response, and online availabilities give us in FPB ad insertion great hope to reverse the stagnant advertising revenue we have seen in the recent past, and will open us up to great potential for the years to come. And staff would recommend the board approve the 5-year managed service agreement with Viamedia. Staff would also request that if this is approved, you grant us permission to begin the termination process for existing SeaChange and WideOrbit contracts per the terms of those contracts. SeaChange has a 90-day notice of termination. WideOrbit contractually requires a 90-day termination, and we would follow the rules to make sure we get out of those contracts properly. Open for any questions, or if you have any questions, Mr. Denton or our Viamedia representatives, we'd be happy to respond.
Well, I have a couple questions. One is, we put out a request for proposals and we got one response.
Well, we only got one response. We sent out 3.
Okay.
We researched online. I found 3 of what appeared to me in my research, the largest companies in the country that did this. And we sent out the RFP to those, and we only received the 1 response, which exceeded all the standards that we had set forward in the RFP in terms of meeting the hardware qualifications, what services we wanted to be able to make use of, and they even offered some other ones that we hadn't asked for as part of their proposal.
Okay. I was curious if you followed up at all with the 2 that didn't quote to find out why they weren't interested.
We had some equipment recommendations that we had put out as part of the proposal. You will see it in the RFP that's listed there. In terms of, we wanted to make sure the equipment was of a brand and quality that's respected and known throughout the country and in the industry. Both of the individual companies that did not respond seemed to manufacture their own equipment, which I couldn't do any research on. They just build their own servers in essence, and they have their own proprietary hardware. Whereas the software system that Viamedia's proposal uses is what's called part of the Novar system, and it is one of the most widely used systems in the country. And as a matter of fact, some of our advertising agencies, the regional advertising agencies out of Lexington and places, have asked us to use their software to export some of our proposals in the past. We can't generate currently using the WideOrbit system our proposals into their format. This would allow us to give them exactly what they're asking for, so that's another great benefit too. Strata is the name of the software package that seems to be an industry standard, which would be a part of this new package.
Thank you.
Do we have any sense of what the scope of work is going to be around integration effort and what those costs are going to be?
The Viamedia contract.
So there's no integration there back?
This covers everything. They will supply all the hardware, all the software, all the upgrades, all the technical support 24 hours a day. They will build a VPN in our head-end for live monitoring of our streams. They will be able to see in Lexington every network, all 50 networks. If there's a problem, they'll instantly know that. They'll be able to log in, and if it's not something they can solve, they're 30 miles away, or they would work in conjunction with our existing head-end staff to resolve the issue.
So it's completely turnkey for us?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
We would maintain our own sales staff.
Right,
everything else,
everything
all
else
the back-end side
right.
is Viamedia.
So this is probably for David. So they cited the 19% growth. What informed that 19% growth number?
As he talked about, they're participating in 75 DMAs. I think based on them knowing the type, our geographic area, our customers, and the success they have had with other companies lent them to that estimation. I trust that they've got more data than we do on that, and we went with that as the amount.
And just to throw in, 10 of their partners are Kentucky companies, so they have a lot of existing business in Kentucky to base their projections on.
Out of similar size markets, and
they know the type of advertisers through NCC that are buying those markets already, and we probably will be able to take advantage of that as well. And it might even help give some incentive for other NCC buys now that they've got the Frankfort market through their conglomeration of the people they're already working with. It's just a hope.
Great. David, would you mind walking us through your micro print here?
So on page 165, I've got some financial information, and I came at this from I've used the word income statement. We have a statement of revenues, expenses, and change in net assets, but as an income statement example, looking at what do we look like over the next 5 years. We usually do 5-year budgeting, and we just kind of stuck with that. What do we look like if we were to do 24 ad insertion in-house? That's the first section at the top. What do we look like if we do in-house and were to increase our capacity to 50 channels? The increase in difference between the cost of the equipment, I understand close to be double if you were to go to the 24 to 50. You also have an increase in the annual service agreements that is essentially double as well. So that was a comparison of if we were to do it in-house, and then looked at if we were to go with Viamedia, how that looks with the 19% increase in revenue across all years, considering the fact that we do not need to rehire a traffic and billing coordinator because all the billing and all that will be handled between us and Viamedia as well. Thinking and considering, because this is income statement example, I showed depreciation on the first two examples because that would assume we'd have purchased our own equipment. We have 15 years of depreciation. So we have no depreciation, and with the Viamedia example, we haven't purchased it. I also show the increase, or the savings we would have of not having the fringe benefits from a traffic and billing coordinator. As we're going to talk about in a little bit, we've had in July 1 of 2018, we've had a 46% increase in our Kentucky retirement employer contribution. So I think it's important that as we go look forward, I talk about month after month, usually the 4 different things that we use our ratepayer, customer owners, monies for is operating expenses, infrastructure investment, paying down our debt service, and also having enough money for those reserves. Anytime we can try to reduce operating expenses, I think that's a win for our customers, and this would allow us to be able to do that. So those savings from the salary that we don't have to pay, the benefits we don't have to pay. So the increase in sales, decrease in cost, even though we have to pay a commission fee each month, still shows that you are, based on all the assumptions we have over a 5-year period, would show that we would have an increase in net assets to the company of around $178,000 over the 5-year period. If you were to go to double ad insertion in-house, because of the increased cost of the equipment, the increased cost of the service agreements, of course that has the depreciation in there as well, it shows where it's, based on these assumptions, that it is much less profitable, or I should say increase in net assets for the company to go to 50 ad insertion. So to be able to have 50 ad insertion with Viamedia, with all the assumptions we have, and be able to show that we are better off than doing it in-house, definitely financially and based on the assumptions we have, that Viamedia looks like to be a good thing for us to do. It's a 5-year commitment, so we have a chance that at the end of the 5 years, see how it looks and see where we sit. But based on the fact that we have relatively flat revenue growth, our opportunities to provide additional services to our customers we just don't have that today. The national sales stewardship and the other amounts we mentioned on the direct response are things that we can't provide. And then I can say, talking with each of the existing media services staff, that we've got 100% support from our current staff on this. I know our account executives are excited about getting to sell additional products, which means they do get commission based. So that means they have an incentive to go out and offer these new products, and which will benefit them personally as well. So I really would like. I look forward to seeing, if the board were to approve, how this looks for us going forward. It's things like this that we try to find within our company, ways that we've identified a problem, we've got fixed revenue and increased expenses. We found a solution to it, we think, with Viamedia, and hope you see it the same way.
So do these numbers, we were certainly seeing decreased, viewership over the cable. I assume these numbers have that reduction curve incorporated in it?
We talk about, if you look back over the last 10 years, it's been relatively flat over that whole time. So we do have decreasing, no doubt, cable customers. We've talked about that year over year. But at the same time, it was about 1.5 years ago that we saw our broadband customers cross over our cable TV subscribers. So regardless of the decrease, we still have seen a relatively flat revenue growth. So I'm assuming in there that that's the last 10 years of flat revenue growth is what I assume going forward.
So are there any other risks you see to meeting that 19% lift in revenue?
We've reached out to some other people that have had the service, and based on what I hear, I feel good about working with this over the next 5 years and see how it looks.
Mr. Baldwin, another thing to keep in mind here is, who knows what the state of linear cable television is going to be 5 years down the road at the constant rate. The great benefit of this package is the online availabilities. That's only going to grow. We don't have that capability now. That's definitely something we need to get into. And that area is going to definitely grow over 5 years. And at least by getting into this now, we learn it, we take advantage of it, we can bundle it with our other existing services with linear advertising and make our product even more beneficial to our local customers, and should serve us well into the future as we shift more from linear to the online sales opportunities.
Yep. And the other thing that jumped out at me is looking inside the material in the packet is, we potentially could roughly increase our ad insertions by almost 2.5 times, something along that lines. Do we have any sense of how that's going to impact, or any potential impact that might have on our number of subscribers? If we're inserting that much more commercial content in programming, is that going to have? Do we have a sense of that having any effect on folks cutting the cord sooner or anything along those? We don't expect an impact on that?
No, I don't think so. I think we're kind of looking at a industry systemic issue with the cord cutting.
So on inserting more ads, are those ads already being inserted by somebody else and now we get to displace those? That Adam's saying yes.
The networks insert commercials 24/7. The fact that we are able to do local ad insertion, we are in essence overriding what they're saying. We are splicing into their signal, inserting our ads during that 1 minute commercial break, and then coming back. So if we didn't do it, they're making money off
Okay.
of it.
So the
We're just
viewer won't see
making-
any change.
We're just making a
And added
benefit.
ratio of-
And we don't know necessarily that having 50 channels, we're going to have more advertisers want to spend more money. Advertising revenue is, that's kind of the last thing on the list after they pay for overhead and their rent and their employees and their benefits and stuff like that. It's discretionary income, advertising revenue, advertising dollars are. So what we're hoping is the fact that we're going to be able to bundle additional services might entice them to spend more, but probably one of the greatest potential gains of this is the national sales stewardship. The national people from NCC may want to take more opportunities because we're giving them more networks to insert on that they might want to do that we can't do now, might increase their buy or people to buy into the network, and the direct response. All that unused inventory spread across 50 networks is going to be pretty great and could potentially lead to some good revenue numbers.
Reading through all the Viamedia information, there's something about a background check, client background check. That's what I thought I saw.
There's a credit check comment
Oh,
in
is
there
that
about customers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's
I
for...
feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, it's an invoice check. Yes.
Okay, so that's fine. I was surprised to see it. And my other question was about other customers like us that would be using Viamedia. It sounds like you talked to them a little bit.
Would you like their representatives to speak to that? They
Sure.
deal with the customers.
Yeah, well, if you want.
Would y'all mind coming to the microphone since we're recording this and it's hard to pick up back on this?
My name is David Solomon. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Viamedia. Been here since, I've been in Lexington selling in Kentucky since 1993. So I'm a local guy. We started this company out of Lexington, and it was in a very small organization, and it's grown only because we work with cable operators. We try to promise things that we can commit to and deliver. And over the years, we started with one partner, and we've ended up with 64 partners. As far as Hawaii, all the way, to the up into Maine, all the way down into the southern parts of Florida. The difference here is we're local, and the Kentucky operators we work with will brag, all of our operators. But part of this, we said, listen, here's every list of every partner we work with. Here's every phone number. Call anyone. And if they have a negative word to say, we'd be surprised. But you have access, and they did their diligence. So I encourage you to look into our reputation, to look into what we commit to, and when we commit, we deliver. And we try to be conservative. And the only thing I'll say is you asked a question about the revenue. The revenues we're committing to are the things that we can actually control, which is national, and we believe that there's opportunities to improve your national sales. For a host of reasons. It's direct response because we can insert on more networks and maximize anything that's unsold. As far as the online revenues, those aren't even considered in that 19%. Anything you do in online is on top of that because your team's going to be selling and we're just going to support them. I can't commit to something that we're not actually doing ourselves. So anything you get from that is on top of those revenues. So I encourage you to do your homework on us, and I really hope that we can work with you. I've been trying to work with you guys for over 15 years, so I hope this works out. Thanks. Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Thanks.
Okay.
No. Okay. Well, I think,
So, Garrett, it says consider agreement. Are you guys asking us to approve this today or just?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
clock's ticking on those,
Yeah.
that old equipment. I keep
Well-
my fingers crossed every night when I go home that I don't get a phone call with
Well,
bad news.
It sounds like the support dies at the end of 2018, so,
Yeah, but the hardware, it's hard to find pieces for.
Okay, so it's getting harder to-
Stuff that's not even manufactured anymore.
okay. Well, one thought that crossed my mind thinking about this is that we'll be hiring a new cable assistant general manager, cable telecom. And so we'd be making a 5-year commitment before that person is hired. I'm not sure how limiting that is. It's just one thing that concerned me.
I think based on what we're showing here is financial performance, we've laid out, of course, you can make different assumptions and the numbers change, but I think we've made very conservative assumptions and show that the cost of doing nothing is higher than the benefits of going with Viamedia. So I feel very good about our numbers. I feel good about the different things that Viamedia can help us with. I think we talk about finding ways to help our ratepayers, and anytime we can do that, I think it's an opportunity that we seriously need to consider. I feel very good about it, and I wouldn't say that if I didn't.
Just finally, I'd add that I was actually hired in 1999 to specifically manage this operation. It didn't exist until I came on board. I come from a background with Fortune 500 companies, state government, video productions, my entire career since 1974. So I was hired to come on and build this operation. I've run it since that point in time, and I'm just giving you my professional opinion that this is the best opportunity and the direction that we should go for future growth and long-term viability of ad sales in general.
Well, I think it was a compelling presentation. Thanks, guys. So I would make the motion that we approve the agreement with Viamedia Cable Advertising Managed Services and for the termination of existing SeaChange and WideOrbit services.
A second.
Okay. Let's see. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks,
I
Gary.
would just ask for approval also. Does that mean that we have permission to follow through on the termination proceedings?
I believe I said that in the
Yes.
motion, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It
Thank you
is
so
part of
much.
the motion, so yes, go ahead. Okay. We're now ready for public comment. We ask that you give your name and if you're a member or if you purchase FPB services. Perhaps, oh, we do have, okay.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Warren. I am a Frankfort Plant Board customer. I want to talk about a couple things today. I want to talk about the retrans fees, and I want to talk about internet, and maybe a couple of other things at the tail end. I pay a total of $109.77 plus $15 in cable boxes, which I choose to have 5 TVs with 5 boxes, and I choose a smaller quality. My total bill, including all utilities, is $293.02, more in the summer when the air conditioner's going. Now, let's get to the internet. I pay the $38, which is not much, so it's the standard internet modem. So, given that, this past week, couple of weeks, I can't get hardly any signals. I have an iPhone, 2 iPhones, an iPad, and a laptop. And we're never on the laptop. Just very shoddy. I was walking around the house trying to watch a video the other night. When the gentleman came to install the preferred cable in the boxes, he needed to get on the internet to do whatever he needed to do. And he kept looking and kind of walking around. He said, "You do have internet?" And I said, "Well, yeah." So he finally found a small signal. And I know I'm in a big house at Indian Hills. I have a woods behind me, old neighborhood, and I'm sure that's part of it. But what I want to say is let's try to work on our internet service in maybe those areas that doesn't necessarily get the better service. And I probably do need to call somebody to see if maybe there's something wrong with my boxes too. Okay, thank you. Now, let's talk a little bit about the retrans fees. That's what everybody wants to know tonight, I'm sure. You know, this is not going to be a fun thing for anybody. It's not going to be good for some customers. It's going to be great for others. I like the way that Kathy stated in her article about the piece of cake. You know, I want it all. I always want it all. I'm probably not the only one. But I'm speaking for myself. I think the loss of 2 channels, and we're going to get WRDB back, which they are a good news station. I used to love them, was devastated when they decided to get rid of it, but now I'm used to the other channel. But then we're going to give away 2 channels, and we're still going to pay a fee. Now, I don't know how that's going to work with somebody else, but if I'm going to have to go ahead and pay a little bit more fee, I guess I want all my channels. I like the Louisville channels, I like the Lexington channels. Changes are hard. I understand that you want to take some channels from preferred and move them to classic. So does that mean that on the preferred channel, do we get new stations? It's going to be hard. This is a hard thing for you all. It's a hard thing for the customers. Now I want to go to my TV guide. I've argued this point since we started talking about this. Okay, I'm going to take Sunday, and I've told you in the past, we are really great big sports fans, especially professional football and NASCAR racing. Okay, so on Channel 5, which is Fox, NFL football, Chicago Bears and Cincinnati Bengals. Now, you know, you take that out of there, you're going to get some Frankfort people, local people really upset because most people here are Bengal fans. I, on the other hand, am not. But that's okay. Now, my team played at the same time on Channel 6, Minnesota. Okay, and so then we go down, and there's another football game on Channel 12. It's Indianapolis Colts at Buffalo. So my remote was working between those 2 channels like crazy. My husband was trying to work all 3 of them. So what I'm trying to say is, I know what a tough job you all have had on telecom and trying to disseminate which channels to keep, which channels to go away. But when you're a sports fan and you watch the classic cable channels with all these sports features, and you take that channel away, there's going to be some upset people. So I just needed to clarify that and tell you all that I don't know what the solution is. My solution is that I would really love for you all to find a way to help fund some of that and give us a little bone. Throw your customers a bone. This cost is bad. It's not your fault that we have transmission fees. That's not I mean, we know that. But a lot of customers who don't come in here and hear this and see this, they don't understand what you all are going through to make these tough decisions and staff. So we get to NASCAR season, and there's pre-football. So Channel 3 carries, most of the time, the NASCAR races. Well, then you got the pre-football season that's getting ready to hit. So all those upper channels are filled with football games. David, I think you know where I'm going with this. We've had this conversation. So, given say that, I'm going to ask, we try to give in consideration to keep these channels and throw the customers a bone and help us out with this cost. And yes, I expect that we will have some of those costs added too. Now, what I was going to ask is, do any of you all know what channels are going to be added from the cable, taken from preferred to the cable? Do you all know at this time? If you do, you can tell me after the meeting. Do you know that answer? Okay. I want to thank you, staff and members of the Cable Advisory Board. I know how hard you've worked on this and how you've struggled with it. And Kathy, I want to shout out to her. I think she's been the best PR that Frankfort Plant Board's ever had. When she puts an article in the paper, she doesn't mess with you. She tells it like it is, and I loved her example about the cake and the hole and the half. So shout out to Kathy and that explanation, and I appreciate you so much. You know that. And thank you, board members, tonight. I would also would hope that any comments that any of us make tonight would be in the minutes in this meeting tonight to reflect future agendas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay.
Before we move on,
Yes.
one question for Adam. Per Kathy's discussion about having trouble getting a signal in the house, do we offer a higher performance wireless access point, or do we offer additional access points as a service for folks?
Yes, I made a note here to reach out to see
Okay.
if it's actually one of our rental units or if it's her personal unit. I don't know yet.
Okay.
But yes, we do have extenders we can install.
Okay, good. Okay. We'll move on to departmental reports if no one else has a comment.
Some time ago. Earlier back this year, I believe we started doing, putting web comments to the board in the board packet, and just want to note that we have those in there for this month. Mainly 2 from the same customer relating to disconnect fees. And then we had one on November 18th regarding our outage, electric outage. And if, looking back at the 18th, that was the high wind day when we had quite a bit of things going on. So I just wanted to point those out. And I guess with that, we'll move on to the cable department with Mr. Heller.
Yes, the cable department report starts on page 179 of your packet. The first page is the penetration report for customers. We got a couple categories that are down, and we're kind of looking in to see what's going on. VOD, broadband, and security are a little below budget. We're looking at that and see what we can come up with there. The next 2 pages are basically your outages. And we had 6 outages the previous month, and 4 of those were on Saturday, November the 18th, as a part of the storm and the high winds. The last page of the report is basically our resolution of what trouble calls we had and what the problems are when we got there. So, if you have any questions, I'll be more glad to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Adam.
I think we have Cassie Estel with customer service.
Good evening, Board. In the month of November, the customer service staff assisted a total of 6,590 customers. 1,521 of those customers were walk-ins, and 5,069 were call-ins. The drive-through assisted 1,155 customers during this time period as well. And those graphs are included in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I had one question on the average time, wait time for answered calls.
Yes, ma'am.
For billing was like over 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes. Is there a reason why there's such a long wait time there?
The month of November was a shorter month, and we had a holiday in there, so anytime that we trend to have a holiday, the day after is extremely heavy. We also have 2 cutoffs per month, so I think a combination of a short month with a holiday caused those times to be up some, because that averages for the entire month.
So the number of walk-ins, has that gone down significantly from the old site? Or I haven't found the right page yet, but,
There's not a comparison in the packet, it's just a
Okay.
monthly graph of what we have, but I can look into that information if you would like to compare those.
I'd be curious, but also I know it's influenced by the drive-through as well.
These walk-ins are just customer service and billing representatives. This does not take into account any customer walking in to pay a cashier. This is just people that are seeing our staff for service needs or billing needs, such as payment arrangements or questions about their bill or those types of things. So this is not cashier payments that are taken.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, electric department?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members, as you turn to page 187, you'll see our SETI numbers for the month of November is 24.393. Page 188 is your pie chart that kind of shows you each individual calls for an outage and percentage. Page 189, we'll break it down and tell you how many outages for each of those causes. We had a total of 43 outages for the month of November. Page 190 is going to show you your top 10 outages for the month of November. Miss Phillips is sick with the flu, so I'm going to report on the one accident for her for the electric department. We had a vehicle accident in November. The trouble call truck struck a turkey on his way home from a trouble call. So I did a little bit of damage to the grill. Turkey did not survive. He didn't get eaten for Thanksgiving, but so that's all good. There was nobody else hurt with the turkey.
Oh, I didn't even know we had local turkeys.
Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sounds good. Thank you. So, SEPA?
Yeah, the SEPA report is starting on page 191 in your packet. You'll notice that's the monthly. And you'll notice also looking at page 192 that for the month of October, we lost close to $12,000 with SEPA. And that brings our annual profit and loss to $655 of profit. So basically we've broken even so far at this point. If you look at page 193, you will see SEPA performance since 1997. And right, again, this year we're breaking even. It's better than last year, which was $114,000 in the hole. And again, I would expect that the break even will continue next year as well, due to the fact that they're still doing additional work on Center Hill Dam, and the things that need to be done on that are going to take longer than they thought. So the force majeure condition that they've been in the last few years is going to continue. So that we kind of expect it to break even next year. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
You mentioned they had some unexpected slowdowns?
Some of their equipment, some of their risk assessment on some of their equipment. Try to see if I can find exactly what it was. Yeah. Had to do with some saddle dam repairs on Center Hill Dam, and they're still trying to figure out exactly how they're going to repair some of those issues.
Oh, so it was in worse shape than they thought it would be.
I think there were some additional issues they weren't originally aware of, and they're trying to figure out the best way to solve that. They were originally expecting that sometime in 2018 we would go back to a normal state, but that's not going to happen now. And again, they haven't at this point given us an idea of when it will go back to a normal state. I will attend the spring meeting. I think they kind of call it in February or March, usually in Tennessee. I'll go to that meeting, and hopefully we'll get some information at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds good. KyMEA update?
Yes. Just want to update you on the next board meeting. Tomorrow, December the 20th, at the Bowling Green Municipal Utility Building in Bowling Green, we will have, that's at 108 Center Street. We will have the December board meeting. It's at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Time. They are actively working still on securing a CEO for the organization. I know that that's gotten down the road. I think there has been an offer accepted, but there's the pre-employment items that they take care of, and we'll be able to update you further when you know all that's been taken care of. But I do think they anticipate the new CEO starting early in 2018, January. Also, I've gotten a letter. I know we've talked about rates for KyMEA, and I just want to briefly talk about the timeline for some rates. At tomorrow's meeting, the December 20th meeting, the AR Project Committee Rate Formulating Subcommittee will report to the AR Project Committee and the full KyMEA Board the proposed rate-making formula. The formula will be based on conservative assumptions as to the anticipated cost of energy, capacity, and transmission for all requirements power supply. The formula will be discussed and, if necessary, revised as suggested by the AR Project Committee and the KyMEA Board. Such revisions will be reviewed and voted upon by the AR Project Committee and KyMEA at its January 25th board meeting. At that meeting, an indicative rate based upon the assumptions will be calculated. The indicative rate and final formula for calculating the rate will be formally presented to the AR members in February. I know we talked about the rate, but also I know, Mr. Baldwin, you expressed the formula for the rate is just as important. And so we're looking at February of 18. In December 2018, the AR Project Committee and KyMEA Board will re-examine the indicative rate and make any adjustments the committee and the board determine that might need to be required. The final rate will be established in January of 19 and become effective for AR Power Supply beginning May of 19. I know some of this timetable it could switch in a little bit, but it's not nailed in stone, but that gives you a little idea of the future. So in February, we should have the formula and also some the initial indicative rate. As we get closer to going live in May, they'll update us in January for changes and any additions to the portfolio. So that's just a little update I want to give.
Can you put that in email? So
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I got it all.
Absolutely, I sure can.
And when you mentioned going live in May, you meant of 2019?
In May of
just to clarify
2019,
for
yes,
people.
yes.
And one thing we had talked about in the November meeting was possibly videotaping the meeting.
I'm going to bring that up tomorrow at the board meeting and just, tell the board that that's something that Frankfort has requested. And at that point, see what they say.
Okay.
I'm glad.
Well, we did bring it up at the last meeting, right? So you didn't bring it up at that meeting?
We reached out through email about it, but I will be there. I think this is the first official meeting since I have been, set as the director for Frankfort, and I will ask for it tomorrow for them to provide video of the board meetings. Most of those are going to be at BGMU throughout 2018.
So I guess this is this is like the third time we've asked them for the videotape. We'd asked with, Mr. Bannister, back in June, I suppose. And then now we will have made a third request. Can we just take a video camera and record it and post it on our website?
I will, as a member, ask for that and see where we go from there. But
I guess we could just do it, right? We could bring some of our filming people. We could bring our own camera.
yes, I would feel more comfortable talking with the group, but I promise to you that I will verbally talk about it at the meeting and ask that that's something that you all have expressed interest in, and see what they go from there. But I don't know if I feel comfortable personally walking in with the camera and setting it up.
Well, it's a public meeting. Couldn't anybody walk in with a camera?
They sure can.
Yeah.
They could.
Well, I guess I would make a motion that we either, bring Cable 10 staff to the meeting with us to record, or we purchase a small video camera to take and record.
I second that. Discussion?
I think we should give him the opportunity to talk with the other members first before we just go in with the camera
Well,
and start.
this is our third request.
And the first one was in June. And they used to videotape the proceedings, and they stopped in June, or stopped in May, I guess.
Yeah, as you said, they are public meetings. Anybody can come, anybody can attend.
I mean, we've got all the gear. We can help them out and make it happen. I think their last response was, that they didn't have the facilities to do it and the equipment to do it, so we certainly do. So
Sure.
it would certainly help us be informed with what's
true.
going on.
True. I don't know, just we're talking about Cable 10 schedule. I don't know. Tomorrow morning, we're leaving out at 7 a.m. We'll be back about 7 p.m. I'm just letting you all know, let me make sure that we have staff available for not other things. I know they do about 10, 11 original programs per week, so I'm just throwing that out there.
I mean, even if we took a small, personal camera, I think that's fine. Either is fine.
Gotcha.
I can loan you a camera.
Appreciate that.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Very good.
Thank you. Safety.
We already did.
We've got Kim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, there was two OSHA reportables. One was with electric vehicle and one was with water. And so Scott carried the electric, and we'll have Alan with water, and hope Kim gets back soon.
Okay, yes, and I'm sorry I missed that because we did discuss it.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The water distribution reports on pages 197 through 199. Water Department had 4 main breaks and 0 outages. And then we did also have one OSHA recordable. An employee was climbing up on the truck and slipped and fell and caught himself and injured his shoulder. And he is on light duty at this point. So if anybody has any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you. And water treatment plant. Julie.
Good evening. In November, the water plant treated roughly 241 million gallons of water. We averaged a little over 8 million gallons of water a day produced. The flow in the river in November maintained pretty steady and average numbers, running about 4,500 cubic feet per second. This equates to a little bit less than 3 billion gallons of water a day. In November, when I was putting this report together, I would have told you that November had the lowest rainfall of the month. We had 2.49 inches of rain. Majority of that came in one day. December is on a track to beat that. We have had a half inch of rain in December, so we are looking at some lower flow conditions in the river right now. But we are very much capable of treating that. And speaking of treating the water, we've had a project ongoing at the treatment plant this week. We are in the process of pulling or removing one of our raw water pumps. We're going to do some maintenance and rehabilitation on this pump. This will not affect the pumping capability of the plant. We have 3 raw water pumps. 2 of those pumps at any one time are capable of providing full capacity to the plant and to any demand that we would experience at the water treatment plant. One of the contingency plans that we have had in place for the past 5 years with our raw water pumps is that we have one in storage. So we have removed the one pump today that we are going to take to Cleveland, Ohio, to a certified peerless factory warranty and repair shop and have it rehabilitated. Tomorrow, we will be installing the pump that we have in storage. So we will not be without those 3 pumps. But this is some work that that is fairly critical and that is ongoing at this time, and we hope to have the majority of it complete this week.
About how much does an individual pump cost? What price range is it in?
Now, that I do not know. I don't know what the total cost of a pump is. David?
The last time we bought 2 pumps, it was about $500,000.
Okay. So how much does it cost to restore it? Just that would give some scale.
Looking at this pump, we are budgeting roughly about $70,000 to do the complete pull, rehabilitation, and then the return to the pump. When we receive this pump back, it will go in storage in preparation for the next pull.
Oh, so a rotation.
It's a rotation.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, consider retaining Crowe Horwath to conduct the 2017-2018 financial statement audit for a fee of $32,500.
Yes, ma'am. Just for our customers and for those here tonight, the Frankfort Plant Board is required by state statute, under the statutes that the Frankfort Plant Board operates under, to have an external audit every year by a certified public accounting firm. We put on an RFP for services about a year ago. Crowe Horwath did our audit for the 2016-17 year that ended June 30, 2017. And so this is just a standard procedure to accept the engagement letter and approve retaining them for the 17-18 audit year. They come in towards the end of the fiscal year and do some preliminary audit work, and then they come in. I was very pleased with the way it went for our very first year last year, and we'll get this, if you approve, get it signed back to them, and they'll put us on the schedule for next year.
Okay. Yes, I know you mentioned before that you were impressed, and I had a chance to take a look at the report, finally. And one thing I did notice that I was concerned about was the information technology environment, the comments that they made and recommendations they made. And I looked back to the audits done in 2016 and 2016 and 2015, and noticed that we also had some deficiencies in that same area, the IT area, and that we actually had a report done in 2015. I'm sorry, I have these mixed up. 2016, after there was a big problem at Target with people's personal data being lost, and looked over things. And there we had significantly low ratings. And that showed up to me that this is an area maybe we need to focus on, the IT security, passwords, all of those systems, and just want to note that that's an area we should consider going forward.
Sure, absolutely. I've been here since I was hired in June of 2012, so I've been through 5 audits. And if you look back over the last 5 years, we were with Mount George Hilton Medley before Crowe, and you can tell how we worked through comments over that engagement period with Crowe. We've have a couple of things that are to the management comments that we look to address. A lot of the comments are things that happen today, but that aren't officially documented. So, I've got and asked IT, they're going to prepare and have these things addressed. All the items that are on that management letter to the management about, or I should say to the board about the things during the audit will be addressed, and we'll make such as an obsolete inventory policy. We don't have one today, but Katrina's already started the process with working with our support services staff, and so we're going to have all those addressed.
So you're saying some of it's just documentation?
Correct.
But it is an important area, and I think it's
Absolutely.
Constantly changing, and new ways to break the system are happening.
Absolutely. I think it is worth saying, since we're talking about it, that we have received clean audit opinions, unqualified, unmodified opinions over the last 5 years.
They are very good.
And I appreciate, it takes a lot of work to make sure that those policies and procedures are followed to make sure that that clean audit occurs. So
yes.
I'm very proud of that.
Could IT produce a report for us for the next meeting that kind of specifically goes through those 4 reports and tells us what procedures they've put in place to address all those items?
Absolutely. I don't see why that would be a problem.
Great, thanks.
And I think that area showed up weak compared to all the good work that you do with accounting, which got a stellar approval. So it's easy to zero in on the weakness, but
sure,
it's an important area. So, let's see, do we have a motion to, or we need to make a motion here?
I'll make a motion that we retain Crowe Horwath to conduct the 2017-2018 financial audit for a fee of $32,500.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passed. FPB Employee Health Plan. Diane.
Good evening. I want to first introduce Blair Pickerel. Blair is with Cheryl Morgan, our benefits consulting company, and he's here today to help with the next 2 items and answer any questions the board may have. On January 1st, the employee health plan will begin using TEGNA as our provider network. And at the November meeting, staff discussed possibly contracting directly with selected providers who don't participate in the TEGNA network to minimize the disruption to employees, and this will also help control costs to both employees and the health plan. Following the November meeting, Cheryl Morgan had suggested that the plant board participate in reimbursement rates that they negotiate or that are negotiated by Employer Advisory Services, or EAS, for these out-of-network providers. EAS has staff that is experienced in this area, and Mark Morgan with Cheryl Morgan, who's the president of Cheryl Morgan, owns EAS. There would be no additional cost to the plant board for this service, and MedBen would administer the rates as essentially a second network for these providers. In recent weeks, EAS has entered into an agreement with Capital Medical Group, which is one of the groups that doesn't participate in the TEGNA network. And the plant board can use that negotiated rate for claims beginning January 1st. If this is acceptable to the board, the general manager can request that EAS contract with additional selected providers as needed on a limited basis after a case-by-case review. Be happy to answer any questions.
So to clarify, this is different than when we talked about someone who has a pre-existing condition working with a specific doctor that's not in the system. This is more people who are going to medical services that just aren't in the system.
That's correct. The providers are not in the TEGNA network. The employees and dependents can continue to go to the these providers, but what we would like to do, and what Cheryl Morgan would like to help us do because of the transition, is to have contracts in place so that we could basically get have the same reimbursement to these providers as they were receiving when we were with Baptist Health. And that way, employees would not have to change providers in this instance, for example.
So would this continue indefinitely?
That's my understanding, is that it would be an arrangement that would continue indefinitely, as long as it's, agreeable to Capital Family and whoever the providers are that are involved.
So those that maybe didn't see last meeting, we are currently a member of Bluegrass Family Health, which are closing their doors and are not allowed to be a provider for next year, so we're switching to Cigna. The board voted to do that last month. There's looked to be about a 3-step process with this.
Oh.
If you're in the network Cigna today, that's great, we're off and running. If we have someone, Capital Family is a great example, a large amount of our employees go to Capital Family Physicians, so we were looking out to do direct agreements with those. Actually, first ask them if they would like to be a participant in the Cigna network. If they say, no, we don't want to be a participant in the Cigna network, then we'd go to directly trying to negotiate rates with them through EAS. And if that doesn't work out, hopefully one of those two do work out. And then the only other option at that point is what we talked about last month, that someone who has ongoing medical care, that it would be on a very rigid basis that we would allow to pay outpatient prices for in-network, for items, for providers that are not in the network. So it's going to be a multi-step process to trying to make the transition from providers as easy as we can on employees.
And I believe when you talked to us before, you were going to give us some regular updates on what the financial impacts of this are.
I sure am. I know of a couple of cases that might occur, and we'll update the board. As you know, between service and the claim being processed can be a while, so I'd say quarterly would probably be about the time I would give you updates on those.
Okay,
Sounds good. Okay. So do we need to make a motion on this, or?
Informational.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Then number 8, consider FPB Employee Health Plan pre-certification requirements effective January 1st, 2018.
Okay, under our health plan, there are pre-certification requirements for specific treatment or care. And, pre-certification is just part of managing the health plan to ensure that the treatment is medically necessary and clinically appropriate. Currently, their pre-certification is required for inpatient stays, outpatient surgery, home health care, durable medical equipment that's over $500, and proton beam therapy specifically. With Cigna beginning in January, we need to select from pre-certification options that they provide. We propose that the plant board adopt the pre-certification requirements that are listed in the Executive Digest. There's also additional information on pages 216 and 217 of the board package. Those specifically are inpatient care and then outpatient categories that are listed. But unfortunately, this list is not customizable. Previously, durable medical equipment, for example, if it was over $500, it required pre-certification, but with the system that Cigna uses, you have to select just durable medical equipment, in its entirety. There are some treatments that are listed on pages 216 and 217 where we have indicated no under pre-certification, but some of those are not actually covered under our plan. For example, gastric bypass. So the lists that are on pages 216 and 17, that will be communicated to Cigna and MedBen, but that is not information for employees as far as coverage of benefits. And if approved, staff will notify employees and ask MedBen to update the health plan document and notify TEGNA. So again, the pre-certification would be required for those items that are specifically listed in the Executive Digest.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It sounds good if you're comfortable with it, and it doesn't sound like an extreme change from the past.
Yes.
So, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the employee health plan pre-certification requirements effective January 1, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Thank you, Diane. Okay. Number 9, consider retransmission consent agreements with Morris Network, Gray Television Group, WLEX Communications, LLC Sinclair, TEGNA Incorporated, Hearst Properties, Raycom Media, The Block Communications, and Harvey Couch will help us understand this.
Thank you. Just as some background, every 3 years, FPB must negotiate under the 1992 Cable Act retransmission consent agreements with local broadcasters for carriage of the ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox affiliates in Lexington and Louisville. Starting in 2009, those broadcasters started charging FPB's customers a fee for retransmitting their signals. You can see how the line works. In those 9 years, the total monthly fee paid by FPB customers has risen from $1.30 to $12.03. If FPB was to renew all the affiliates this round, the retransmission surcharge would climb to nearly $20 per month. And we're not alone in this. There's a national trend too, and it looks almost the same as ours does. So that's just around, across the country, the retrans fee projections, in billions of dollars. Back in June of this year, during budget discussions, FPB staff expressed concerns about the coming renewals and their increases, and budgeted for FPB to not renew duplicate affiliates. In October, Martha DeReamer from the Matrix Group presented results of a cable preference survey conducted of FPB cable customers. That survey found that 60% of cable customers surveyed wanted to maintain broadcasters from both Lexington and Louisville, and at the same time, they preferred, by a ratio of 2 to 1, dropping duplicate channels in the interest of having a smaller rate increase. Over the past 60 days, staff, with the help of outside counsel, has successfully negotiated retransmission consent agreements with all 8 local broadcasters. As we proceeded to negotiate these agreements, we discovered an issue in the language of the Louisville agreements. You can refer to Linda Ains' memo of November 24th, which is page 221 of your book. But essentially, the language gave the Louisville affiliates the ability to revoke our consent after we sign an agreement based on their network affiliation agreement with ABC or CBS. At that point, staff and council felt renewing the in-market Lexington affiliates was the wise choice to avoid the risk of not having any network programming. So with that information, as well as the financial terms of the agreements in hand, staff and the Cable Advisory Committee recommend approving the following agreements. Morris Network for WTVQ, Gray Television Group for WKYT, WLEX Communications, Sinclair for WDKY, and out of Louisville, Hearst Properties for WLKY, and Block Communications for WDRB, and not approving the agreements with TEGNA for WHAS and Raycom Media for WAVE. Doing so, following this recommendation, would raise the retrans surcharge to less than $16 in 2018 instead of the nearly $20 it would cost to renew all the stations. We feel as though this is the best solution, providing the most content at the best value to FPB's customers. Please note that Block Communications, or WDRB, is contractually forbidden by Fox from retransmitting Fox broadcast into Frankfort, and that's why they've not been on the plant board for the last 6 years. We've had some discussions with DRB this time around, and staff feels like we've reached a mutually beneficial agreement that would allow us to retransmit WDRB news and syndicated programming into Frankfort, and that Block Communications would be responsible for switching the feed from Fox to Antenna TV when required by their affiliation agreement with Fox. WDRB is the #1 rated news station in Louisville and has by far the most news content in Louisville. Additionally, the Sinclair agreement is an NCTC agreement for carriage of WDKY Fox Lexington. It also contains carriage rights and requirements for the tennis channel, which is preferred cable channel 151. The renewal of this retransmission consent agreement includes renewal of the tennis channel at an increase of 22% over current year rates. It also requires migration of the tennis channel from preferred cable to classic cable. And these terms are the same or better than what we received in our direct retransmission consent agreement proposal that we received from Sinclair. I know you're aware, but I'd just like to remind you that the terms and rates in these agreements are confidential. So I urge that we avoid speaking about any of the actual rates or combinations thereof until you guys make a final decision, and at that point we can talk about what that number is. But I just don't want to add and subtract and then we can figure out. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on this item.
I was hoping to make it to the Cable Advisory Committee meeting, but it didn't work out. Did they have any specific concerns or recommendations?
No, I mean, their recommendation is the same as staff's.
Okay.
I think they felt that it was the best value presented to maintain presence in both markets and try to avoid a significant rate increase on our customers.
Yep.
The general manager from WTVQ was here to speak, and he spoke to them, just sort of giving their perspective of how how this business part works, and I think that was helpful. But I think staff is in agreement with the advisory committee on a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So we've got the data from the survey that clearly indicate that our customers would prefer the rates to not go up. And so what happens if 3 months down the road we're getting different feedback once the reality of the shift happens? What's the timing if we decide to go back and pick up the channels that we omitted this time around?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could. I can't predict how they would react, right. But certainly, I mean, there's nothing prohibiting us from re-engaging with them. Mm-hmm. I would anticipate that they may be more aggressive in their offer, but maybe not. So yeah, we can absolutely, if you guys decide to not renew some of these and feel like you want to have another conversation about that down the road, we can do that.
Okay. And what's the ability to put some of the additional channels or redundant channels on preferred instead of on classic?
So the primary signals. And most of the multicasts, which are like the sub-channels for the broadcasters, in the agreements are required 100% penetration. So it's got to be in that limited tier. I talked to Chris Aldridge at WTVQ, and they have, I think, 6 sub-channels beyond their primary. We carry 2 of them today, My Network and Antenna TV. We have the rights to carry the other 4. I don't know them off the top of my head, but in this agreement, we'd have the rights at no additional cost, and he said that we would be able to add that to a less penetrated tier if we wanted to just sort of supplement. Mm-hmm. So I think that's certainly something worth further investigation, considering, especially to Ms. Warren's point about sort of reinforcing that preferred tier, which has had some, we've lost some stuff off of that as we moved it down. So. Yeah.
And just a small point, who's the outside counsel? Is that somebody within CTC or who is?
No, Linda Ain is a local. We used her last turn 3 years ago, and she works with other operators locally in doing these things. And I think, talking with Hans and John before, we found her to be very helpful to help us find gotchas and help kind of, steer us in the right direction through the negotiations.
I see.
So,
I hadn't heard her name before.
Yeah.
One question on the retrans costs. If it was a Lexington-based distribution company like us, a Municipal or cable company, would they charge the same rates if if the people and the broadcast was in Lexington versus we're in Frankfort and they're in Lexington? Or maybe we don't know that information?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I've read some, I was actually reading a report this afternoon that showed that sometimes the sort of fringe on the outside of the DMA, which is what we are on the Lexington DMA, that maybe the viewers have less value to the broadcaster in advertising or whatever, and so then therefore they are maybe less willing to offer, they would maybe charge more for it because they don't look at our customers as valuable. I mean, I don't want to put those words, but that was sort of the theory presented in that paper that I read. So I think the main driver in these negotiations is size. The bigger guys get better deals because they bring more customers. Like Spectrum, I don't know this, but I would be shocked if Spectrum doesn't pay less than we do for all of these, just because they're, hundreds of thousands of subscribers and we're not, less than that.
Let's see. Okay. So Dawn, I know you had some concerns about which channels we'd be retaining, and have your questions been answered?
Yeah, so you're saying that we would not retain either WHAS or WAVE?
Yes, ma'am, that's a recommendation.
I was hoping that more of the public would have an opinion tonight.
Me too.
Well, they may have.
We've heard. I mean, sort of anecdotally, I've heard from folks that have called or gotten to my phone, and I've heard both sides, and I would guarantee that whatever direction we go, that somebody's going to be upset. Either they're losing a channel that they watch, or their bill's going up more than they wish that it would. And so that was sort of what we were. That's the have your cake and eat it too. We're trying to sort of thread the needle where we can get the most for the least, and that's what staff tried to present.
Yeah, I mean, I think keeping the rates low is important. And, I think with streaming and most people having smartphones and iPads, et cetera, and actually that was a question that I wondered, if we don't have WHAS and WAVE, will people still be able to pick them up like on the My TV thing or?
Yeah, I mean, like through Watch TV Everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's it's pretty much exclusively tied to the network programming. So it's not the local news. It's the shows that come on in prime time.
Right.
And so that will continue as long as we have an ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox affiliation agreement. But they won't have the ability to stream WHAS unless, I don't know, maybe they provide that stream for free today, and I'm not sure if they do that. But not through our TV Everywhere agreements that we have in place. Those are with the networks.
Okay, so they would have to have the particular app on there.
Probably, yeah. Whether it exists or not, I'm not 100% sure. And if they can, obviously they can pull it in over the air if they're in the right topographical area of Frankfort and the wind blows right.
Thanks.
So I guess we need a motion, and I'm not sure what would cover everything that you've recommended. Does the original action item cover the final motion that you're recommending?
Let me see. Well, no, I think I would. It would be to approve retransmission consent agreements with those 6 broadcasters that we're recommending, and I'll list them off if you're interested. It would be with Morris, Gray, WLEX, Sinclair, Hearst, and Block. Those would be the 6 that we'd recommend approving.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
And just as far as mechanisms after this, we've always, the retrans has always been a pass-through fee for our customers. So obviously this approving whatever you decide to approve tonight would have an impact on that rate. So talking with David, I think the timeline we were looking at was in the January meeting, asking for a public hearing at a special meeting in January, approving the rates in February to go into effect March 1. That's sort of how we had laid out our
Yep.
schedule for that. And again, it's a direct pass-through. And I don't know if I could just speak a little bit to Ms. Warren's point about, I forget how you said, throwing a bone to the customers. Maybe we wouldn't use that term, but if you could show the next, we are not proposing to raise classic cable rates this next year, where we generally would do that in January, February, March. And if you could show the other one, which is the multiple lines. And so we've seen a steady increase. So the red line is the national cable average. We only have data through 2013 because the FCC takes a couple years. The blue line is what our classic cable rate is, and then the orange line is how much it costs us for the programming. And the green line is essentially the difference between the orange and the blue. So that number has stayed flat through the last, essentially flat for the last 15 years. And so we're trying to help, offset some of that extra cost by not adding to the increase. That we would just increase the retrans fee, but not the classic cable rate this next year. So it's still, you're paying more and maybe getting a little bit less, but we'll try our best. I think supplementing preferred cable is good, and we'll have some conversation about that later. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that is a good point. It's something for the customers. Okay. So I think the motion we have come to is consider retransmission consent agreements, or go ahead and make retransmission consent agreements with Morris Network, Gray Television, WLEX, Sinclair, Hearst, and Black Communications.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So motion passed. Thank you,
Thank you
Harvey.
very much.
Okay. Migration of 2 AMC network channels. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, well, that was quick. Yeah.
Migration of 2 AMC networks channels from preferred cable to classic cable.
Thank you. In January 2016, the board approved an NCTC agreement with AMC Networks for the carriage of the following channels: AMC, WeTV, IFC, Sundance, BBC America, and BBC World News. As part of that agreement, FPB is required to migrate to classic cable 2 of the channels that are currently on preferred cable. That's not a staff choice, it's part of that agreement. And so we're required to do that by January 1st of 2018. At the December meeting of the Cable Advisory Committee, they recommended moving Sundance and BBC America to classic cable. So staff would plan to move those channels by Christmas. The tentative channel numbers would be BBC America on 93, Sundance on 94, which is where EWTN is today, and that would move to 96. So it's just an information item that we're going to make that change before the holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Item number 11, confirm continuation of FPB Board's approved compensation plan as stated in the FPB Guidelines Governing Employment. David to discuss.
Yes, ma'am. If you will recall back, it was June 7th, 2017, we were walking through our budget preparation for the 2017-18 year, and we were talking about compensation, specifically payroll increases for our staff. At that time, we were aware that pension reform was out there and that it would be affecting FPB in some way. Didn't really know how. At that time, the board decided that we would keep our current compensation plan budgeted, but that we would keep the funds in the budget, but would come back to the board for confirmation that we would be able to continue with that, primarily for our January 1, 2018 raises. Today, we've got a compensation plan in place. It's been in place for several years. The idea is to be able to attract and retain qualified employees. We also wanted to make sure employees are hired in at below market rates, the minimum of their pay grade. And with this compensation plan, it allows employees to progress through their pay grade in about 7 years' time. So within 7 years, you get to the market point of your grade. So we are asking that we would continue, the board would confirm continuation of the compensation plan, allow us to give us the ability to attract and retain qualified staff, and also to help people move through their pay grade. The compensation plan is in your board book. We just talk out loud. Employees have the ability to have a 2% raise in January and July of each year, as long as they have a 3.0 or above on their employee job performance appraisal. Employees above midpoint do not get that automatic increase. They're subject to the board's decision on anyone above the maximum or the midpoint of their grade. Something in the past, employees have been willing to hire into FPB because we really have great insurance, and also the ability with the defined benefit pension that KRS offered. Those things would encourage people to stay, maybe a little less to start for a really good retirement. We've managed to keep those insurance benefits pretty much intact. We have made changes that have increased employee compensation, or I should say employee contributions to health care. But pension reform is not passed, but it does seem to be moving towards a defined contribution 401k structure, which we think will diminish our ability to attract and retain employees. So we're just asking it's about $110,000 a year if you were to, in January, give 2% to those that are eligible, assuming everyone gets a 3 or above on their performance appraisal. So we'd just like to be given that permission to move forward. I think from what it looks like, if the KRS reform were to pass, and if it's done right, you're looking at about 30 years to get that plan to a fully funded situation. I don't think it's reasonable for us not to extend raises for 30 years. So I think for us to continue we had 27 new hires this year in 2017. So we truly are seeing a shift between longevity employees are moving on to different things, different chapters in their life. Some has been accelerated by unknowns with KRS, and some is just naturally looking to the next step in their career. So we'd like to ask if you continue.
Right. I had one question on all the new employees. How long are they here before they get a performance appraisal to qualify for the 2%? I mean, if they were hired 2 weeks ago, does that work, or how does that work?
There is a 6-month probation period.
Okay.
And depending when you're hired in, you have to get through that probation period. Mm-hmm. So usually it's going to be after that 6-month probation, depending on where it lands. Mm-hmm. So you're not automatically eligible for it.
I was just curious how it worked, however it was. It's fine. Any other comments?
So from, a few months ago when Mr. Cubon had his questions, it sounds like nothing materially has changed. We're still kind of in the same limbo. We don't know what's going on with the pension program. And
it's good. I didn't bring up the point of where we are today, because the idea was to wait and see where we are with KRS. Yeah. We do have the official rates for the July 1, 2018 plan year. It is a July to June year, just like our fiscal year. So July 1 of 18, the contribution rate FPB pays to KRS will be 28.05%. So 28.05 cents of every dollar we pay to eligible KRS participants, that's what it's going up 46% from the current 19.18. So it's about $1 million a year additional that we will need to pay into KRS starting in July. Mm-hmm. So we knew it was going to be around the 28 range, which it is. So nothing's really changed. It's actually a little less. We thought it was going to be 28.89%, but we still have we're in the same situation. Mm-hmm. But at least we know for sure what it is. It's just the employees don't know what it looks like on their end.
So you list $110,000 in the for the payroll increase. What does that look like over the average term of an employee for our total contribution into retirement and all of that? So what's the actual cost of the additional 2%?
So you've got the 2%, then you would have on top of that 2%, which is $110,000. You have today it's 19.18% on top of that 110. And then you have 7.65% for Social Security Medicare match for the Frankfort Plant Board.
So about 26% addition to the...
Correct, on top of the 110.
On top of the 110.
And that's for any raise, any time those things are applied. Yeah.
And that's yearly?
Yeah, so that's the dollar impact for this one time. Of course, that continues on if you approve. Right. That would be based into their base rate.
Mm-hmm. So how does that the maximum raise somebody's going to get with that 2 and 2 is going to be 4% a year? How does that compare to city government employees, state government employees, and how does that track with the rates of those other
I can't recall what the city and county have done this last year. I do know through November of the consumer price index of the last 12 months is 2.2%. So we're right in line with those semi-annual increases, at least the 2% in January. I can't speak, I'm not sure exactly what they've been given. I don't know, Diane, if you remember anything. I know it's hard to put you on the spot, but if anybody can remember what the city and county did, I cannot remember. I can't either. I don't know.
Do we have any idea what the state did?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I knew all that
no
at one
idea.
time, but I kind of was focused on
Right.
what the impact
That's
was to
right, yeah.
us. But I know there's always those discussions within each of the governmental entities on how they want to move forward.
Outside
But I
the-
do know there were raises passed.
Outside the actual numbers, do we feel like we're in line with those local employers?
Yes,
Okay.
I really do.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we confirm the continuation of the FPB's approved compensation plan as stated in the FPB Guidelines Governing Employment. Second that.
It's fine. So this would apply to, specifically to January?
This would be, the raise in question was January of 18, but this would mean nothing really would change. The money's budgeted, and we would move forward with the plan as it stands today. We were really just asked to really come back and revisit it with the board to see what KRS reform looked like. And we're not much different. As far as FPB goes, we know what it looks like to FPB. I think we're going to be paying this rate 28% from as far as the eye can see.
And we're just actually voting right now on what will happen in January versus later in 2018. That's another situation.
We will confirm that we will continue the plan as it's approved by the board, and then that will continue on until the board decides to change it.
But we would be approving it again in 6 months, is what you're saying? Or
No,
not?
ma'am, it would be in effect, and it would take another similar action like Mr. Cubine did in saying, hey, don't do this one.
Okay,
But it will continue on until the board chooses
I see.
to change it.
okay.
I'll second.
Okay, good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion carried.
Thank you. I know the employees appreciate this well, so thank you.
Welcome. Okay, number 12, consider approval of rates for equipment and services provided by FPB to the Frankfort Independent School District, FIS, under the FIS/FPB modem project. David, again to discuss.
Yes, we're working with Frankfort Independent Schools. As you all know, for about a year now, we've had a general structure of how this program would work. And we have a memorandum of understanding that we've drafted between Frankfort Plant Board and the Frankfort Independent School District. The Frankfort Independent School District Board last night approved this memorandum of agreement, and I have the signed copy. Dr. Barber signed that. What this agreement does is to establish detailed rates. What will happen, customers, I should say plan participants for the program, and let me go back to what this is about. That is to help to bridge the digital divide between, for students that don't have access to broadband, to be able to have that access. With this project, with this agreement between us and Frankfort Independent Schools to extend broadband into their homes and allow them to primarily use it for educational purposes. So this will, each customer, I should say plan participant of FIS, they'll have a FIS internet usage agreement that they will sign that says you're going to abide by this program, and it has various different things laid out. We will use that agreement as approval from FIS to include that participant in the plan, to say that they're in, and we will bill them accordingly. What will happen is we have to set up an individual account for each of these parent guardians of the students. They'll see a $10 charge for the monthly service and a $5 modem rental fee. But they'll see a credit come out of that for a zero balance. And we'll pull all those credits and attach them to the Frankfort Independent bill, and we'll send that to them monthly, just like we do any other customer. They have $60,000 that the city has passed to KCDC, and KCDC sending to FIS to pay for this. Based on we have around, it's varying on the amount of addresses, but we think it's solid 2 years. The $60,000 in funds would last a solid 2 years, unless they just have a large increase, which I don't see that happening. So what we're asking is to approve the memorandum of understanding. If you do so, we will start installations as soon as we start receiving paperwork. I know that our customers have to sign a MESA master service agreement with FPB to establish account. We do have some addresses that do not have any services with FPB, so they'll need to have a MESA through FPB, sign a user agreement for FIS, and then we'll schedule installation and get them set up. I know Dr. Barber is very excited about this. He spoke with me today, telling me about what his board had done, and we're looking forward to kicking this project off if the board would approve the agreement.
And Dr. Barber's in the MOU, and he's...
Yes, I have his signed copy for Ms. Rosen to sign if you do approve.
And about how many students are we getting into the program, or households?
About 50 households right now that it seem to be qualified. To qualify, you can't have broadband existing. We don't want to encourage that. And then we also need to be in the service territory. You're looking at about 50 homes and about 100 kids right now, 100 students that would participate in the plan. I do think that will increase as we get rolling. I'm estimating at the most we would have 100 households, and then you can usually say average 2 students per house. So they do have to keep track of those statistics in the memorandum of understanding between KCDC and Frankfort Independent, and I know they're going to be reporting back to the city on that as well. So I think we've talked about it quite a bit. There are 3 hotspot locations as a part of this that we would establish. We've put in the commercial grade Wi-Fi equipment at the Ewing Street Gym, Walter Todd, and also King Center. We're meeting with the FI staff on Thursday to discuss some of the details of managing this program. I would include those equipment management as well. So we are, if you give us the green light, we'll take off with it.
I think it's a great program. It's a great opportunity to level the playing field for students at Frankfort Independent School Systems. I would hope that my fellow board members would agree with that.
I make a motion we approve the rates for equipment and services provided by FPB to the Frankfort Independent School District under the FIS FPB modem project.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm glad that we finally have that moving.
Very good.
I know it's had trouble getting there. Okay, manager comments. General manager comments.
Yes, I think the only comments I have is just included in your board packet for December. We try quarterly to give you these project logs. We go down each department and just lay out what each department is working on from you can get very detailed level or to just to a large level. So I just want to point those out, that we do that, and we have those in your board packet. I think other than that, I think that's it. Okay. I do know I think that's it for now.
Okay. That's good. And is this similar to what William Lynn sends out? Or I guess he does the weekly updates.
Yes.
So it's a little bit
So we have the weekly updates that we provide to the board, to staff, and we also send to the city to see as well, just walking through what happened that week.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great snapshot. We've tried to include pictures. It really helps you to see what our men and women are out doing every day. And
yep.
So.
Okay, good. Okay. And looks like David Billings is ready.
We've got 2 things that came in.
Old and new business?
Old and new business, we sure did.
Okay.
So the first thing, old and new business, David's going to give us an update on the reservoir and liner and things of that nature, so I asked if he would do that.
Okay.
It won't take but a few seconds. The board will recall we executed a contract to do the lining project of the reservoir. The contractor had some difficulties after the hurricane that went through with Texas. So after some delays there, they're scheduled to begin work January the 8th. So prior to that, on the 27th, Mr. Alan Smith will be taking the reservoir out of service and prepping for that. So we are on schedule to begin work January the 8th. The other project I wanted to update you on was where we're at with the reservoir replacement plans. Board will recall, we reached out to Tanglewood Neighborhood Association and asked for comments on the plans. On December the 11th, they responded via email, and I believe those have been made part of the board agenda. So,
Yeah, it's the sheet we received.
yes, ma'am. So, unless I get different direction from the board, my intention was to move forward with the plans that we have and bring back to this board in January a set of plans or a set of documents that should be suitable for planning and zoning approval. So that's where we stand, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
First, just going back for a second, the liner replacement is the north reservoir, right? Okay. And it appears that TNAI hasn't given us a lot of input other than they have no comments on landscaping.
Well, they say in their email that they opposed the proposed 7 million gallon reservoir.
Okay.
So I think the last meeting that they had with us, they indicated that they would rather see 2 4.6 million gallon tanks up there as opposed to a 7 now and a 7 later.
Okay. And later could be quite a ways off, like decades.
I would say at least 40, 50 years down the road, given the projections we've looked at.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update.
It's just a little informational item for you, so just let you know those are underway. And also, we had one agreement come in on the Monday, actually, that we met for our agenda review. We had something we'll let Vint discuss as far as renewing our existing SEPA agreement.
Yes, again, this came in last week, so we weren't able to include it in the original agenda. I apologize for that. This is agreement between the individual SEPA municipal customers in Kentucky and OMU to allow OMU to continue to market our energy for us as they have done for the last, I think it's 5 or 6 years. As a reminder, Frankfort is not an energy market participant, and so we do require a third-party participant to sell our energy into the markets. And again, we're talking specifically about the Southeast Power Association, our energy that comes from those dams in southern Kentucky and Tennessee. So OMU, Owensboro Municipal Utility, they've been providing this service for Frankfort and the other municipals as well. And I think they've done an excellent job doing it. They do it at minimum cost to us. It's actually for their cost, whatever it costs them to do the transactions is basically what they charge us. In calendar year 2017 through October, Owensboro, they have sold our energy for us for a total of $790,000 for a fee of just real close to $21,000 is the fee. As I talked to you before during the SEPA report, we are roughly breaking even this year with SEPA, and that of course, a huge portion of that is that we're selling the energy into the market. If we don't have this agreement and we're not selling our energy into the market, we would be in the hole $790,000 at this point. So this agreement you have before you is to continue basically the agreement we had last year. I've provided both of those in your packet for you. The one thing that is slightly different about this agreement is this would, rather than extend it for 12 months, this would extend it for 16 months and take us right up to the point, April 30th of 2019, to where KyMEA would begin as our energy supplier. And at that point, we would have 3 options with KyMEA: to sell it ourselves, to let KyMEA to someone we wanted to let KyMEA sell it, or use it internally for our own use at that time. But this particular agreement has nothing to do with KyMEA. It just takes us up to that point, and continues what we've done. The other cities that are involved have approved the agreement at this point. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. I think Hans has reviewed the agreement as well.
And this is the same as we approved last year. Just the difference in term length is really the only change.
Term length, I think there's some difference in price as far as some things, but it's materially the exact same contract as we had last year.
Sounds good. Do we have a motion?
I would make a motion we approve the SEPA contract with OMU for marketing our energy.
through April 30th, 2019. Okay.
A second.
Discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Let's see. I also had a issue or an item for the agenda, or new and old business, which is the GM hiring process. I erroneously added a closed session concerning that, which has been pointed out, and James can confirm that it is not applicable here. But I would like to talk about the hiring process and the best way to proceed. I think we're all agreed that we want the very best candidate for the general manager. And I'm interested in doing a national search to know if we have a current person on staff, or if we chose someone from farther away, or not on staff, that we have the very best person for that position. So, any comments on that?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, and I just think we should initially try to hire the person ourselves. That we can use our HR person. There are publications and professional organizations that list job hiring, and if we don't get a good person from that, then we can hire the agency. But we've spent over $100,000 of ratepayers' money on consultants and attorneys, and so we would be spending more money on a search firm, when I just think it's not something that has to be done tomorrow. Everything's going well as it is with David as the interim, and so I just think that we should attempt to do it ourselves first.
I think those are good points. How would we know if we have the very best person without having an expansive process?
I mean, how do you know you have the very best person anyway? You're going to have that person suggest people. If we don't like the people that apply, then we would move on. But if we find someone that meets our criteria and that we think is good, I don't think we necessarily need to pay somebody to do that for us. I mean, it could slow things down maybe a few months, and right now, I mean, particularly tonight, we don't have a full board, and I really think that we should table this discussion at least until Ralph is back, and preferably until we have a fifth member. That I don't think it's something that we should do tonight with just three of us here.
Well, I guess it seems like it's important that we have an efficient process, and setting ourselves up for doing two processes doesn't seem like the most expedient way to move through the hiring process. And I would also, second the earlier comments about making sure we have the right resource. And that said, it seems like hiring, doing a national search and hiring a search firm seems to be the most effective way to approach that.
I would just really like to table it until we have a full board.
Well, having attended the city commission meeting yesterday, it could be quite a while before we have a full board. And I think that that we should be doing a search. I think the GM is an important aspect to how the plant board functions. And at this point, I think getting suggestions from staff and from board members of what search firms we could consider would be a positive step that isn't taking the decisions away from anyone at this point, anyone who hasn't been designated yet.
I would be willing to go that far,
Okay.
to look to see what search firms are out there.
Right, and I was thinking that staff and all of us could put our suggestions for search firms to James Liebman to collate and contact for their proposals, or would you recommend that as the next step, James?
I could do that if the board sees fit.
Okay. So I guess it's kind of irregular for the chair to make a motion, but my motion would be, if it's okay with you, is to ask staff, Diane, and anyone else in staff to make recommendations for search firms, and then each of us would as well, and of course asking Ralph to make a recommendation too, and to give those recommendations to James.
And then James would solicit the proposals from them.
Yes, and James would go ahead and solicit proposals from the different firms, and that would be a learning experience for us as well. So, is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you. Were there any other items for new and old business?
Yeah, I have a couple. I'd like to have, at least for discussion in either January or February, to look at possibly going back to having after-hours customer service in-house instead of out. To have us look at the cost of having someone possibly until 11 p.m., or I don't know what the magic hour is, and then possibly part of the time on weekends. If you could just give us some, look at some different cost variations, and to have some discussion and suggestion on that.
Do we have some of that data from from the budget session this last summer?
We have. We've gone
Yeah, I
through
mean,
this.
we've gone through the item a couple of times, looking at some different options. One thing I remember off the top of my head is a full 24-hour dispatch staff was around the $600,000 range, if I'm not mistaken.
Depending on
So
what
that
level
gives
you
you kind of
staff
an
at.
upper end of maximum. That's not exactly what you're suggesting, I understand that. So we will have to refresh the numbers and do some more, but we can do
Yeah,
that.
I know that the full-time thing is really expensive, and that's why I was looking at, wanting to look at just a part-time, not full 24/7.
I guess I was confused then on what you meant by customer service. I was thinking like people coming to a window to pay the bill,
Oh,
but
no, I mean, if I'm not calling it the right thing, correct me.
Like an
there.
after-hours dispatch,
Okay, yeah.
customer
okay.
service.
Yeah.
right now, do those calls get forwarded to an outside company, or what do we do now?
Yes, they do. They go to, depending on what type of service you have, we do have after-hours, IT broadband-related services, but the CMS outside third-party service that we have. We've got some internal discussion on this as well. Things aren't going exactly the way we would like either, so I think looking into this again is needed.
Okay.
And then I have one more thing.
Well, one question,
Oh,
should we be
yeah.
making a motion, or is it, do you think it's just fine
We
at this
don't,
point?
we'll just get it started and come back. You said January?
Yeah,
Okay.
or February, whatever's
Okay.
good.
Okay.
I think
We
we've
can
got,
refresh some things. The one thing about January is those agenda items will be due on the 5th.
Correct.
And with
Oh.
Christmas, a lot of people off, that might leave you with about a week to get a report
Yeah,
together. So
February's
you might-
fine. February's
And we'll
fine.
get the information together. We can give it to you right away, but
and I've
may,
tried.
may not be ready for January 5th.
And as you've noticed, I think preparing for this meeting, tried to get things, if we have things that I can get to you ahead of time to give you more time, I will do that.
And then also for the next meeting, we have Martin Luther King Jr. Day is the day before, so that's, is that a holiday?
It's a
for-
Monday, usually it is for the plant board.
Yeah, so that's another awkward thing about January, which, so.
So February's fine.
Okay. If we have it sooner, we'll get it to you.
Then the other thing I had that I know that y'all are just going to be so excited about
Good.
is I'm still waiting to get information on the Reed Smith contract. You know, that was done in October. It's gone into a black hole somewhere, and the board has heard nothing concerning that. We don't know, when communication has happened. We don't know what communication has taken place. And I just think that the board should have a summary of communication that's taken place with Reed Smith. We need to know what communication, when, and I think any future communication needs to include David and James, and the board needs to be notified when that happens, and a summary given of what the communication was. And I'd be happy to make that into a motion if it needs to.
Like I said, I would note that, you and I spoke about the Reed Smith stuff and talked through all that. And also, I believe you spoke with Reed Smith either last week or the week before. And as you know from both those conversations and the list of the materials they've been sent, they've looked at those materials, and we're in the process of trying to schedule a session where we can have them speak to the whole board, so the board has a whole status and understanding of where everything is.
No, I don't know all that. I mean, you gave me the list of communication. You said you've talked. You've said that, we were possibly going to hear something tonight, but we didn't.
Yeah, we had originally thought about scheduling this evening, but then we were talking about scheduling two items for that, and one would be the E3 presentation that we discussed 2 meetings ago around the RFP analysis, and then also the Reed Smith, and we felt like 2 hours of closed session in an open meeting would be an unfair burden on the public that would be here, given the rates discussion, and figured there'd be a large public audience. So we opted instead to look at scheduling a special meeting that we could just focus on those two issues.
And unfortunately for Ralph, he's not here, and that would have been
Right.
only 3 of us. So it is something that we're all working toward.
But we have no clue as to what you're working toward.
Well, the attorneys will tell us when they speak to us in the special meeting.
I think normal process is for when communication between a board person or the attorney and to a consultant or the attorneys in this manner, that the board is filled in on what communication has taken place, and that hasn't happened.
Well, I disagree. I've sent you the list of documents you requested, and we spoke face-to-face around what that conversation looked like. So I'm not sure. And then the next update would be the attorney speaking to the entire board, so everybody's on the same page.
Okay.
Are there any other items for new and old business? Let's see. Request permission to have the chair call a closed session. Move to call a closed session to discuss potential litigation about liquidated damages regarding the administration building pursuant to KRS 61.8101C.
Second.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.